Just Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guest. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacles or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. And just think, it's Friday the 13th. I don't know about you, but it's been a pretty lucky day for me so far, so it's all good. Today we have two excellent guests. In the first hour, we're going to be speaking with Michael Tellinger about the lost civilizations of South Africa. And in the second hour, we're going to be talking to Brooks Agnew about the Hollow Earth theory. Both interesting topics. But just as a reminder, Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you too can study to become a medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. For more information about that, go to AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. Just Energy Radio is also broadcast on Fate Radio. You can hear episodes on iTunes as well as download them from YouTube. To keep informed of our upcoming show schedule, do visit www.justenergyradio.com and sign up for our newsletter. Also, on that site, you can access our over 4 years of show archives, so you can check out programming just like this, 4 years worth, for free. And free's good. We like free. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Michael and get him on the air. Michael's been on once before, and so we're going to kind of pick up our conversation kind of where we left off. And so if you're unsure about what we're talking about, please do check out the interview that we did earlier with him that's on the Just Energy Radio website. So Michael Tellinger has been one of South Africa's best-selling export authors. His regular articles on human origin and his book, Slave Species of God, have been praised by readers in over 20 countries. Michael is a scientist in the true sense of the word, never shying away from controversial issues, scrutinizing every clue methodically. He graduated in 1983 from the University of Witwatersrand Medical School in Johannesburg with a B.Pharmaceutics degree, a passion for the cosmos, genetic, and human history. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Michael Tellinger. Hey, Michael.
Hi, Rita. Nice to be talking to you again.
I know, but you are in the U.S. Yay.
Yes.
What are you doing here?
Yes, we've been here for just over a week now. Started our second United States tour. We did a tour here last year in August and September and October, and we came back to continue the pilgrimage, I guess, sharing the information of our research and discoveries of vanished civilizations of South Africa and Southern Africa, which, based on my research, seems to be presenting us with some very important missing clues and evidence of the origins of humankind.
Well, I for the people listening, I went and listened to Michael speak when he was here in Dallas the last time, and it was fascinating. If you're interested in ancient mysteries or our origin, it's a must-go. If you're near, it's a must-go presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to be in Dallas.
Now we got $20.
Thanks, Rita. Yeah, we're going to be in Dallas again. It was such a wonderful event last year, and so we're looking forward to Dallas again, and made a lot of friends there, and I'm coming back with more information, more research, more scientific corroborative support for the original theories that I had. Now there can be no more question or doubt about what we are talking about being scientifically accurate.
Excellent. I had a question in my mind, and it just went whoosh, right
it
out.
Happens. The amazing thing is, I mean, that's exactly what happens. Is this, this subject is so huge. You start to investigate origins of humankind, and before you know it, you're immersed in, quantum physics and metaphysics and history and astronomy and geology and all kinds of other weird areas of science and paranormal activity that you'd never before imagined could overlap. And yet, the moment you start researching this field of interest, all these areas start to overlap very, very actively, and that's an exciting thing, because you realize that everything is connected and everything comes from the same source. It's just our society that we are in at the moment has become so divided that we forget that everything comes from a source, that everything is connected and everything comes from a point of unity, and that's a very exciting thing.
And I think it's wonderful that you were looking at your work and your research from such a big, I'm going to say more global perspective, as opposed to a traditional archaeologist would just look at, here are these structures and this is how they're put together and this is the dating, and it would just be this little box, and anything that fell outside that box would just be ignored.
No, and this is why I have a big problem with dogmatic approaches to origins of humankind, and academics that do exactly that approach it from a very narrow perspective, because you can't do that. You've got to be able to embrace information and clues from an extremely diverse area of science and information and religious and metaphysical and quantum physics and so forth. As I said, if you're not able to do that, you're going to run into problems very quickly and not be able to understand what you're dealing with, because it is now evident, and I can speak from absolute scientific support that we now have and research that I've got for the ancient civilizations of Southern Africa, who I believe were the primordial race of humans on planet Earth that people like Zachariah Sitchin has been talking about for a long time. We now have the physical evidence for that primordial race of humans, and what they did, how they lived, how their lives revolved around mining gold, what technology they used, that they were tapping into an advanced knowledge pool and understanding of what you started your show with, and that is frequency. Understanding frequency and sound energies and so forth. And this is the amazing thing that's coming all out of Southern Africa at the moment.
Well, who were these primordial humans that you're talking about?
Well, the Sumerian tablets give us a lot of information about this. And until we started uncovering these structures in South Africa and in Zimbabwe and Botswana and Mozambique, the whole Southern African region, until we started uncovering these structures, very little was known about this. And at this stage, I'm really the lone voice on this at the moment, but that's not going to be for a long time, I guess. What we do know is that there's a very large civilization of probably more than 50 million people that lived at the southern tip of Africa close to 300,000 years ago, and they were mining gold. And everything in that society seems to revolve around gold, and also other minerals, iron being one, and obviously all the other platinum and copper and anything else you can imagine. And they were doing all this stuff a long time ago, and the evidence supports what Zachariah Sitchin has been writing about and referring to this place called the Abzu that the Sumerian tablets refer to as the place where the gold came from, and that's what was going on there.
In your intro thing, and even in your book, you talk about a slave species. Are we the slave species? Who are these slave people?
There's no
and what's
doubt
their relationship to these primordial humans?
Yeah, the primordial humans is the slave species. It's really our early ancestors. What they looked like is still a big debate. I don't think they looked anything like we do today. What modern humans look like today, they were probably slightly different to what we imagine or to what we see ourselves as today. But they were clearly a cloned species, and they were cloned for one reason and one reason only, and that was to be the slaves or the primitive worker that was created to help in the mining of gold and make sure they could get as much gold out of the ground as possible. And you know what's fascinating is when you start when you read the Sumerian translations without the knowledge and the information of what I've been discovering and some of the people that work with me, if you read it separately, it doesn't make any sense. And then you start discovering these stone structures, the circular stone structures, and the huge areas that they cover, the fact that there are millions of these stone structures, that they are not all, or most of them that we're looking at the moment, are not necessarily dwellings, but they're actually something else. And you start realizing that there's a huge mystery going on that we don't understand. And once you read the Sumerian tablets and you read what they talk about, the settlements in the Abzu and the activity that was going on there, it doesn't make much sense until you start discovering the structures themselves, and then suddenly you can start cross-referencing these things, and a much clearer picture starts to emerge. So in many ways, I'm really, really sad that Zachariah Sitchin has passed away, and he could have added a great amount of great value and fast-tracked this understanding, because clearly the guy had huge amounts of knowledge and information that wasn't even written down in his books, that he would have picked up on if he had seen this physical evidence. It would have triggered certain bits of information that previously he might not even have understood himself. But once you see the evidence and the structures, it would have reminded him of certain things, and he would have been able to put two and two together and say, oh my goodness, I see what this is. I now understand what that translation there means, and so forth. And it's a slow process, but the more pieces of the puzzle you find, the easier it is to fit the other pieces of the puzzle into this thing that I call the great human puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have a chance to communicate with Zachariah Sitchin?
I did just once last year before I came to New York to do my presentation in August, the last week of August last year, and he declined to come to my presentation with regret, because he had just come out of hospital and he was still sick and weak. And I was hoping to catch up with him on my return, and sadly, 2 months later, pretty much the last day that I did my last presentation in the USA last year in October, he died, and that was unfortunately a sad state of affairs. Are you there, Rita?
Hi, Michael.
All right. You went AWOL there for a little while.
I did. I just disappeared into the app zoo, I guess.
Yeah.
So I have a little, I think Zecharia Sitchin's work is phenomenal. The amount of research, the correlations that he pulls things together, wonderful. And I'm hoping you can help clear this up for me. So I started digging through his books where he references the gold.
Yeah.
And so as an example, in the Lost Book of Enki, sorry to be real technical to you here, he talks about where they're getting the gold to take care of the atmosphere.
Right.
But I don't know. That book is kind of a book of fiction. So it's like, okay, so I don't know that I can really take that. And when you read his other books, he kind of derives the word gold from somebody else's word gold. And I don't know. It's like I don't feel like there's a smoking gun. I haven't been able to find the smoking gun that's what they were there for. And I'm hoping that you have a more solid connection text-wise, since, this is what you've been studying.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Look, there are many references, there's several references to this place called the Abzu, where the gold came from. And, he describes the shape of the land that looks like the heart. And if you look at the southern tip of Africa, it's very, very, very similar to shape of a heart. And that's where they describe the veins of the earth were exposed and were rich with gold. And that's pretty much what's been happening in southern Africa. That most of the gold in the world that has ever been mined has come from South Africa and Zimbabwe, pretty much. And people don't realize this. The amount of gold that's come out of that part of the world is just mind-blowing. The explosion and what I can tell you right now is my latest research, and this is what I'm going to present. What I present on my tour in the United States and Canada at the moment is that Southern Africa has been the best kept secret of the Illuminati for the last 200 years. And the last thing they wanted is the whole world to descend upon paradise, because it's what it is. Southern Africa, South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, those countries down there. It's paradise. The climate is unbelievable. It's just the most spectacular scenery and beautiful place to live. And it's got all the gold and minerals that the Illuminati have been mining the planet completely, crazy. And the last thing they want is the whole world to descend upon their little secret place. So if you look at what they've been doing is making it a really bad place in the press. Don't go there. It's filled with horrible, darkest, deepest Africa. You'll die and you'll get attacked and killed and it's full of disease and all that kind of stuff. And, it's completely the opposite from what's really going on down there. It's like it's paradise on earth. And that's why they've been doing this, because this has been their golden goose. This is where all their riches have been coming from. Remember that the most expensive war that the British Empire has ever fought was the South African War from 1899 to 1902, or 1900 to 1903, the 3-year South African War. And they sent 480,000 British troops to South Africa to fight the Boers, 60,000 guys on horseback who were defending the land against the might of the British Empire, because the British were not going to give that up. This was the golden goose where all the wealth was coming from. And these are the little telltale signs that people have missed. They've overlooked this and completely gone unnoticed. All the other wars that Britain has fought was nothing compared to the effort they had to put into defending the gold fields of South Africa and Zimbabwe. It's spectacular. So, you ask, is there any corroborative evidence that this was the Abzu and so forth? That's just the most sort of recent evidence where most of the gold in the world has come from. But this goes back hundreds and thousands and many thousands of years into human history. The Romans were there mining gold 2,000 years ago already with Antoninus Pius, the Roman emperor, from 138 AD. The Babylonians and Phoenicians were there about 300 BC. Evidence of their gold mining activities has been found. The Dravidian Hindu gold miners called the Makomati people were there about 2000 BC already mining gold and trading with gold. And the gold trading in southern Africa is well documented in Arabic documents that go back to the 8th century, to Zanzibar and the land of Zanji, talking about the gold trading routes along the East African coast down to the port of Sofala, where the fabled rich kings of the Golden Empire of Southern Africa were established. And this information is not really well known by the rest of the world. And so it's a part of the world that is rich in recent mystery and also very ancient mystery that goes back to the Sumerian tablets and what the Sumerians refer to as the time, before kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, and it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm. One of the parts that boggles my mind, if we were just these people, coming out of our little huts or whatever, how they, one, figured out where the gold was, the first people that went to get the gold, if the Indians were there 2,000 years ago, they must have heard about it from somebody. I don't know that anybody would, go around the entire world looking for gold per se. They must have heard about it from somewhere. And
exactly.
Then, how did they figure out how to get it out of the ground and process it? Because it's not like early in California where people were just gold dredging and collecting gold. I mean, they were mining and digging it out of solid rock.
Yeah, they were digging it out of rock. There's some very interesting examples of recent gold mining, and the interesting thing is that the further back you go in time, the more refined and advanced the process becomes. The more recent gold mining processes are very basic and very primitive. Taking the ore and crushing it and leaching it through all kinds of chemicals and using cyanide and sulfuric acid and nitric acid and all these horrible processes to separate the metals. The further back in time you go, the more advanced the technology becomes. And that is what is so staggering about the conclusions that I've been reaching about the vanished civilizations, because of the frequencies and the evidence of using sound as a source of energy to do all this work with. And to people that are new to this information, this sounds like a bunch of hogwash. But fortunately, we can now support it with scientific and electronic measurements that tell us that that's exactly what these guys were doing. We've uncovered, I have counted more than 10 million stone structures in southern Africa. Now, you've got to put this into context, and there are probably many more than just 10 million. We're dealing with a part of the world that popular history books and the history books you find at university, they tell us that this was a sparsely populated part of the world with just a few thousand people living there. And that's what they teach our children at school and at university. With primitive hunter-gatherers running around shooting some buck and surviving on hunting and gathering food and so forth. And that nothing can be further from the truth. The evidence that we find in the stone circular structures tells us that there was a vanished civilization that had an advanced knowledge of technology, understanding how to harness the frequencies of planet Earth and mainly sound frequencies, the same way that John Keeley used and describes in his musical Dynasphere in 1888 in Philadelphia, and then also obviously the fabulous Nikola Tesla, who gave the world free energy that was swiftly removed by J.P. Morgan. And these guys were using the same technology 200,000, 300,000 years ago to do everything they were doing, creating tools that worked like laser tools. I call them phasers. That's also new technology that's only recently been discovered by modern science. Phaser technology as opposed to laser technology. I have found the tools that they used for this and these applications, and it's just fantastic to see how it all starts to fall into place.
One of the things you started talking about was this technology. Do you think it was like, as you were talking, I mean, one of the things that I started thinking about, I'll just say it this way, one of the things I started thinking about was the idea of chanting. You know, people would have, they would have like a magical spell, but when they would do the magical spell, they would chant it. Do you think there's a possibility that it was them using actually their voice to make something happen, which would come down to us as if you say this thing, this other thing is going to happen? Does that make sense?
Yeah. What you're referring to is something that is reasonably well documented from the Tibetan cultures and the Tibetan monks. Bruce Cathy, the New Zealand physicist, has documented this really well in his books, and he talks about the Tibetan monks and how they move giant blocks of stone by chanting and moving this block 250 meters or more from right in front of them up halfway up the mountain and placing it perfectly in front of the entrance to a cave, all doing with sound. But I think that is a more recent and an adaptation of what was originally devised as very precise sound technology and using frequency and sound as a source of energy. And these are very important things that people need to try and get their heads around, because what we understand energy to be today is a very distorted bit of information. Most people, when you say energy, they think of electricity, and that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. Electricity is a very primitive and a basic form of energy that is devised and designed so that it can be controlled and managed, and people can be charged for it, and you can meter it, and it's quite deadly. It's a deadly form of energy. Everything is energy, as you know, and the laws of physics tell us that energy cannot be destroyed. The entire universe is one giant energetic field. So once you understand that everything is made up of energy, and people that do energy healing and energy work will tell you this in great detail, is that everything has an energy field around it, and stones and rock not only have energy, but they have consciousness as well. Everything is made of consciousness and energy. And these are things that slowly but surely come to us as we do this work and this research. And all this information it's really important to be able to embrace this, to be able to make sense of what the hell was going on in the past. Because unfortunately, our history tells us that ancient civilizations were primitive, and they built things like the pyramids and Stonehenge with ropes and pulleys. Right? Well, that's a complete nonsensical, idiotic concept. So we need to get rid of that very quickly. These ancient civilizations had a very acute understanding of what energy really was. And sound seems to be one of the primary sources, if not the primary source of energy that was used by the ancient civilizations. And this comes to us from the stone circles of southern Africa. The conclusion that I have reached originally, and then now I can support with electronic and scientific argument, was that the stone circles were constructed specifically for the generation of sound frequencies, and then those sound frequencies were utilized as a source of energy.
We need to take a break, but let's come back to this topic on the other side. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're here talking to Michael Tellinger.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Ray Louise, will return right after these messages. And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Michael Tellinger about a lot of stuff, but the most important thing, he's here in the United States. If you're listening here in the United States, doing a tour and might be coming to your hometown, so check out his website, ZuluPlanet.com or Slavespecies.com, and find out if he's coming to a location near you. Yeah. Hi again, Michael.
Hey, Rita. Nice to hear your voice again.
Well, before the break, I'm having like a brain fart day, I swear to God. Before the break, you were talking about how they were using these structures and sound to create energy.
Yeah.
What were they using the energy for?
Everything and anything you can imagine. Most importantly, the gold mining process. From cutting, shafts into the soil, into the ground, into the rock, and then cutting the rock out and bringing it up to the surface. They were using energy for levitation devices. They developed a laser beam technology, which is not really laser, because laser is light technology. They created what we are only discovering now. About 2 years ago, we finally discovered what science is calling Phaser technology, which is sound-activated technology, laser beams, but using sound as opposed to light. So it's not laser, it's called Phaser. And this is only about 2 or 3 years old, this technology on Earth. And this became very clear to me about 3 years ago already, that these guys used sound as a source of energy. And then I started collecting these strange tools and artifacts that just didn't make any sense. When you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and this is what I often refer to the work that we do is very similar to the work what the guys in CSI do. You've got to follow the clues and the evidence, and based on the clues and the evidence, only then can you start formulating an opinion and putting together some sort of a theory of what might have happened. Because otherwise you're just shooting in the dark and you're just making up stories, which is mostly what historians have been doing, often without any scientific substantiative evidence. So now we've got these strange tools that make no sense until you start applying technology that would be Phaser kind of technology. And suddenly it all falls into place. You realize that with this sound-activated, stimulated emission of sound, they could cut rock, they could separate the minerals, they could levitate stuff, and you realize that we get back to what most of the religions and the creation stories talk about, is that sound was a primordial creative source of the universe and all the stuff in the universe. and it always comes back to sound. So to answer your question, what did they use these energy devices for? Everything. For generating heat, for stimulating the growth of the crops in the thousands and thousands of miles of agricultural terraces that we find in southern Africa, and so forth. So you can just let your mind run wild, and it's probably not wild enough because these guys were way ahead of what we're doing today.
There were two questions that came out of the chat room. I fear one was a very quick answer, and it'll blow people's mind, and then the other one is probably a longer answer. First question was, how far back are we talking? The second question, and I hope this isn't putting you too much on the spot, but this is from Rich. Can you ask Michael specifically what he has found that indicates conclusively the application of sound technologies?
Right. The first one is we go back, it looks, at this stage, we're looking at very close to 300,000 years ago, and that conclusion I reach from translating the Sumerian tablets. If you look at Sitchin's work, and once again, you've got to be very careful before you blow Sitchin out the water. I know he's got very many opponents and detractors trying to discredit the man, and quite frankly, I will rather stick by a guy who has devoted his entire life to the translations of the Sumerian tablets and trying to understand what they were telling us, as opposed to a few academics that spend a few years looking at this and moving on to something else because they don't really understand this. And this is a big problem we have at the moment, unfortunately. We have a very large body of academics that spend a few years looking at Sumerian tablets and then moving on to something else. And it's not possible to understand what's going on there. So I'd rather throw my lot in with a guy who devoted his entire life to the translations and the understanding and the reading and deciphering the Sumerian texts and Zechariah Sitchin and his conclusions. And when you start looking at the translations of Oxford University, for example, if you look at their website and the thousands and thousands of pages of electronic pages of text of translations of Sumerian tablets that are all linked together and cross-referenced, they still seem to present all that ancient work and all that written work by the Sumerians as a work of fiction. Now, I'm afraid that I cannot for 1 second agree with these guys at Oxford, because it just is completely arrogant and ignorant by these people, our academics at Oxford, to suggest that the first people who mastered the art of writing only ever, in the entire history of that civilization, only ever wrote down a bunch of crap. You know, it's like I'm not going to buy that. The translations of Sitchin suggest that 40 Shah after arriving on Earth, Enki built himself a special place of observing in the deep Abzu. This is an extract from one of the translations that he mentions, and this is very important. And these are the little things that you find after you make the discoveries of the stone circles. Prior to this, it won't make any sense to you. So here we find this place called Adam's Calendar that I named because we found it. We originally believed it was one of the oldest sites on Earth, and it's turning out to be that, which we now believe is actually Enki's calendar, because it tells us in the Sumerian tablets that 40 Shah after arriving on planet Earth, Enki built himself a special place of observing in the deep Abzu on the edge of a cliff, in line with his abode in the north, and then the Twin Peaks further north. So we find that Adam's calendar is actually built by Enki's calendar, and 40 Shah after arriving on Earth will translate to about 285,000 years ago. Now that's very convenient because it fits very nicely in with the mitochondrial Eve studies as to when Homo sapiens first appeared on planet Earth between 250 and 300,000 years ago. And suddenly we start finding these kind of coincidences that match up. And there's a lot more. I mean, I'll go through this stuff in my presentation, so if you're interested, please come to my presentation. You'll get a lot of this information. The other thing is the tools and artifacts that I'm finding are made of a very specific kind of stone. And that stone is known as hornfels in South Africa. It's a very unique Southern African geological formation. It's a metamorphosized quartzite with a specific component of silica dioxide and iron and aluminium. So it is specific. It's extremely hard crystalline rock. It's a volcanic rock, and it is extremely hard. It's almost impossible to break the stone by hand. It has very strong acoustic and conductive properties because of the iron content, and then because of the silica dioxide, the crystal content, it has got very specific energetic properties. So it conducts electricity, and it conducts energy, and it conducts light and sound. So we've got a very unique geological stone that is very, very appropriate for the using and generation of sound frequencies, and that's exactly what it does. These tools ring like bells, beautiful. It sounds like a piece of metal when you ring these stones, and it was these stones and this kind of stone that was used in the building of the stone circles and the stone structures in Southern Africa. Pretty much most of them were built out of the stone. Some of them are built by a related geological stone called dolerite, which also incidentally ring like bells. Dolerite also very ring, has a beautiful tone when you hit it. And the other important thing is that the dolerite stones, when they are exposed to air and the elements, start to form this skin that grows on them called patina in geological terms. And this patina grows extremely slowly. There is no real accurate scientific measurement, but the estimate in geological terms is that it grows about 1,000 years or more per microscopic layer. So when you have a tool or an artifact that has been fashioned out of this particular stone, the hornfels stone, that rings like a bell, right? If it's been carved or molded, which many geologists have remarked on, very interesting remark that they make when they first see these tools, they refer to them as being molded rather than carved. And that's a very important thing that I can talk about in more detail if we've got time. Once this has been molded, these tools, and then the rock would be in its natural form, this beautiful black, crystalline, hard, metallic rock. And then it starts to form this reddish skin, the patina on the rock that grows extremely slowly. So if you have a skin of a few millimeters or a half a centimeter thick that's grown over the tool or the artifact, we know we're dealing with something that's way beyond 100,000 years or more in age. So that is, from a scientific perspective and a geological perspective, a very strong argument that we're dealing with ancient civilizations and not just something that's a few thousand years old. And then from an electronic and a more scientific approach, very recently we went and did some measurements in some of these stone circles, not too many of them, because obviously a long process. And we measured frequencies that are way beyond our comprehension on Earth today. Anything that we work with in the area of sound, ultrasound frequencies, and aerospace communication and satellite communication is nothing compared to the frequencies that we measure in these stone circles. We find that they're still active and they're alive, and they give us a huge amount of energy in the form of sound frequencies, in the form of electromagnetic frequencies that we also measure, and also in heat signature. So they generate energy in 3 different ways, actually 4 different ways. Electromagnetic frequencies, sound frequencies, heat signatures, and also the decibels, the volume or the loudness at which they generate these energy fields. And this is something that nobody could ever have predicted. So what I'm saying is that there is no doubt whatsoever that these things were used as energy devices and generators of energy, But they are still alive today. They're still giving us huge amounts of energy beyond anything that we use on Earth today. And I'll go into a lot more detail in my presentations about this.
And it sounds like it couldn't just be this huge coincidence of they just happened to pick these rocks and happened to put them in a certain way, and it just happened to produce this effect.
Well, it can be a coincidence, but then once again, you can fall back on scientific principle and scientific argument, and that argument is probability. And probability is a very common argument used in scientific principle. And you ask yourself, well, what is the probability that 10 million stone circles that generate all this energy accidentally generate all these energy fields? And obviously, the answer to that is absolutely, probability of that is, many billions of trillions to one. So we know we're dealing with something that has been consciously and specifically designed to do certain things and have a certain outcome, and that is very exciting, because I think what is happening here, Rita, is that we are, as the consciousness grows, these things are revealed to us. And maybe my part in this revelation is to bring this knowledge and this information from the southern tip of Africa to the rest of the world, so we realize that this is what was going on down there and how this affected the other civilizations on Earth, how they adapted this information and knowledge and how they took it forward, and realize that, the first days will be as the end days, and as above, so below. We start realizing that we are reaching the conclusion of some sort of an interesting prophecy from ancient times and ancient civilizations, now that we're discovering that these ancients had this advanced knowledge and technology, and that it's directly linked to the Anunnaki. There's no question about this. This was the head office and the headquarters of the gold mining operation on Earth, the Anunnaki, creating the slave species to mine all the gold, get it out of the ground for them. And they used it for everything and anything you can imagine. The gold was their source of energy and their source of survival. And how that source of energy and survival was applied becomes a whole nother long debate, which is really interesting in itself. And much of that information, actually, once again, we get in ancient texts and ancient civilizations and oral traditions, even in the Hindu tradition today, newborn babies in the Dravidian tradition in southern India and Sri Lanka, newborn babies for the first 28 days are fed gold. Their parents feed the little babies gold. They scrape their golden rings and golden objects and mix it with milk and feed it to the children for the first 28 days. And this is a direct link to the gods who came to Earth, created the earthlings to mine the gold, and it's just a beautifully entangled, non-stop bit of evidence that just goes on and on and on.
You were talking about the molded and carved tools. Do they take on a specific shape?
Yeah.
Or are they all the same in a specific shape?
No, the two most important tools that I'm referring to are what are called the sacred stones, and these are stones that are round. It's a round stone, and they come in all shapes and sizes, from probably about nearly 2 feet in diameter to right down to about 4 inches in diameter. The stones, like a round stone with a hole drilled through it. But the hole that's drilled through it is so smooth and so perfect. It's like an hourglass shape. It's a concave kind of smooth hole, and the surface on the inside that's been drilled through the stone is absolutely smooth, and think like this beautiful hourglass shape that goes through the center of the stone. And these are referred to by the shaman of Africa, the African wise men and knowledge keepers of indigenous knowledge. They refer to these stones as the sacred stones. And it was a huge mystery as to what these stones were actually used for, until I started finding the other missing parts of that ancient tool, because those are actually tools. Remember, stones carry energy, they carry consciousness, they conduct energy fields and so forth. That's why you don't need wires, you don't need copper, you don't need iron. all those elements in their natural form inside the stones. So just like the pharmaceutical industry pretty much destroys the energy flow when they extract the active ingredient out of a plant and put it into a pill, the same thing happens when you extract the active ingredient out of a rock and you get the iron or the silver or the chrome out of the rock. Keep it and leave it in the rock. It's far more energetic when it's in its natural habitat. Keep it in the rock, and this is what the ancients knew, and they used it as such. And so these sacred stones were actually the converters of the sound frequencies, and they were very important tools. And then the other tools that I found were these conical, pointed shaped stones of all shapes and sizes. Some of them are very large, stands about 1 meter high, 3 feet high, and all pointed towards a point. To very small ones that are maybe 4 inches long and like a little ice cream cone, and which I now refer to as the ice cream cone phenomenon, which links us interestingly enough to a story about Coral Castle in Orlando, Florida. How Ed Leeds Kalman, the guy who built Coral Castle, actually built it, and one of the interesting stories is that he built it with ice cream cones in his hand. So when you come to my presentation, I'll show you exactly how the technology works, how sound is used to create these energy fields, and the Sazer technology that is used for levitation and so forth. It's a spectacular story that just gets better and better as you work on it.
One of the things I find interesting is that if you read texts that come from a long time ago, the late 1800s, early 1900s, and even before that, the material that is presented it's just presented. It doesn't necessarily, all right, I don't want to say it doesn't seem slanted, because the Spanish missionaries, when they talk about the South American natives, definitely slanted, like these people are idiots, and how could they know this because they don't know God?
Yeah.
But I think that, before the show we were talking about that one book, The Ancient Ruins of Rhodesia, and what I found interesting, and you talk about this a little bit in your presentation, I think in your book, is about the giants that were down there. And what I thought was interesting was in that book, he makes a commentary about, and they found these giant bones that were from giants, that they were human bones. And I'm going, all right, this is the scientist guy writing in the late 1800s, early 1900s, which to me kind of validates, it's not some fringe guy writing. In your research, were there giants down there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of evidence of giants in southern Africa. It's just being suppressed by modern academics and universities today, suppress all that information. And it's a well-documented fact that the universities in South Africa sit on this information, but they're not prepared to release it. They don't want to go out there and talk about it the way that you say the old books talk about it. And I find that exactly as you said, you're spot on. The old books, the books that are 100 years old, 150 years old, they talk about this stuff very openly. And even though the priests or whoever wrote these old books write about the people being idiots, in between they give away a lot of information because they talk about the idiots believing in giants, and they present the fact that there were actually giants, bones of giants present there. So we can find some fantastic information in these old books. Yeah, it's excellent.
I'm just looking at the clock. We have 3 minutes. Why don't we take this time just to talk again about your U.S. tour? I know you're coming to Dallas. What are some of the other cities you're going to be hitting on this tour?
Oh, we're doing 29 cities in total. This weekend I'm doing Atlanta. Atlanta I'm actually doing two days in a row. It's a unique stop. I'm doing tomorrow night, Saturday night, my normal 3-hour presentation, and then on Sunday I'm doing a longer workshop in Atlanta, and then we're doing Austin and Dallas and Santa Fe and San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and we're also doing Canada, 29 cities in total. If you want to know exactly where I'm going to be when, go on to zuluplanet.com and click on the banner, and it'll show you, or just go to michaeltellinger.blogspot.com, and that takes you straight to the information of where I'm going to be when, and hopefully I'll see you at one of the presentations.
Cool. If they can't make it to one of your presentations, I know you have a couple of different books, and they should buy them all. But if you were going to recommend one that really sums up what's going to be in the presentation, the things we've been talking about today, what would you recommend, and where can they get them?
You can get my books either as e-books or physical books on zuluplanet.com. I'm busy with a new book right now, which is called The Lost City of Enki. I hope to finish that this year. And also the other very exciting book that I keep talking about in my presentations called The Secret Numbers of God, which I'm working on with the brilliant scientist called Willem de Swart in Johannesburg. And that is a huge expose of pretty much decoding the whole universe and the nature of reality and how it all fits together and you know, where it all comes from and explaining the nature of reality and sacred geometry and the tarot cards and how it all fits together. It's a spectacular work, and that'll be available sometime this year as well. Zuluplanet.com, and hopefully you'll find some interesting information there.
Excellent. Well, our time is up. Thank you so much for coming and being with us. I love having you on. It's always such fascinating information, and when those new books come out, definitely, just reserve a spot for me.
Thanks, Rita. Lovely talking to you as always, and you have a lovely time. We'll see you in Dallas.
I will see you in Dallas.
Excellent.
All right. Bye, Michael. That's Michael Tellinger. His website, again, is zuluplanet.com, and we'll be back with Brooks Agnew and the Hollow Earth Theory after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.